Well, hello everybody,
Turkey.
and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, whichever your sleep schedule or time zone might dictate. We are back. PX Lip joins me as he almost
I,
always does.
I would say back from outer space, but that would be inaccurate. Outer space is right behind us, so
The Webb telescope image is still behind us, and I think I'll keep it there for a while. I kind of like it. Um,
it's a gorgeous image.
it.
So
It is beautiful. And I'm sure we'll get new ones, and eventually I might find another one that I like even
yeah,
better and throw it in there. But for now, I'm quite happy with this. Let's see. Assuming OBS lets us continue to stream, which it
mm,
has,
got my toes
yeah,
crossed
that.
too.
Um, Otherwise, yeah, so if something drops off, just bear with us. We'll be right back. We will do a proper sign off. We don't just kind of hop off the stream. So if you get a technical difficulties, screen over sudden,
Mm.
we'll be right back. I have some weird issue with OBS that's surfaced recently, and I have no idea what caused it. Anyway, the so as always, we'll chat a little bit about anything that we've sort of seen in the news. But the plan for today is one of the things I need to do. As I mentioned before, I'm teaching a graduate level class that introduces students to of various backgrounds to nowadays mostly the internet protocols. Because that's kind of the foundation of our network these days, as well as a whole bunch of other sort of related issues that have more to do with operating networks, operational issues, network management, those sorts of things. But I think some of if you've been here before some of our earlier streams, then you might remember I've been using the GNS3 simulation platform for various projects recently, and so I intend to build some networks that help demonstrate addressing, routing, some of the service protocols in the internet in GNS3, and the students in the class, even though it's not really a lab-based class, will get the opportunity to work with their own GNS3 instances and kind of sort of recreate what I'm doing, and you do some assignments and kind of basically sort of check off that they can actually implement, actually apply what we've talked about in class and what they read in the book. So the problem is, I've only and you'll see in a little bit. Um, we're using a the GNS3 instance that our network administrators built includes a very capable open source router. It's called VyOS, VyOS. It's an open source routing project. It's very, very similar to the Juniper operating system, actually, the Juniper router operating system. And It's very capable. It's really good for what I'm trying to do here, but I don't know a ton about it. I mean, I've used it. I've taught one class, but it was an intro level undergraduate class, and so I kind of figured out. And a lot of those experiments had been built already, and so all I did is really sort of adapt what a colleague of mine had already done. So, anyways, I really need to figure out for this sort of more freewheeling, let's build something fun and that we can use to explore routing and addressing and so on. And probably things like IPv6. There's a whole another can of worms. Um, um, the Yeah, so in fact, that's going to be. I'm going to definitely do a stream and a couple of streams. I'll take whatever network we build, and I'll take whatever network we build and I think create and actually work on enabling IPv6 in that and see what's going on there. Uh, so I'm. By the way, if I seem distracted, I'm trying to keep an eye on my task manager in case it gives me some indication of what on Earth OBS might be doing if it does anything untoward. But so far, I'm not seeing anything really. Um, but anyway, so that would actually be a lot of fun because I haven't had a reason to use IPv6 in a while, and VyOS is actually pretty good at supporting it. So that'd be good fun. All right. Anyway, so that's kind of the plan for today. The other thing we're most likely going to do is I still need to continue my exploration of C Sharp, and I've kind of pushed the course forward a little bit off stream. The Code Academy course I was doing, but may want to hop back in there. I've gotten to some of the more interesting bits, and so it'd be kind of fun to take a look at that. And I think PXLib can sort of compare that to his experiments in Rust at some point if we're doing that. Just because of course we've looked at both of those languages and they're both modern, but that's probably where the similarity ends. They have different design ideas. So anyway, so that we might do a little bit of that. If I'm more rambly than usual, today was a really bad allergy day, and taking about all the drugs I'm allowed to take, which is sort of helping, but it is not helping my ability to stay awake and focused and doing all those good things. So we'll see how far this goes. Trying to think what if anything we have run across in the IT and science and space related news. NASA has been very actively promoting the activities and their Artemis around the Artemis 1 launch. We talked about that a couple months ago when they were first going to launch. They had some technical issues, but the launch system is back on the pad. And the current launch window is, I think the next launch window is August 29th, if I'm correct, if I'm not mistaken. So I think it's a week from Monday. So they've been doing NASA's been doing all sorts of PR around that. So a quick reminder that it's an unmanned test flight. So there are no astronauts on board. It's a lot of test equipment. I think they're just going to do a slingshot around the moon and come back. That's just to now just is sort of I probably shouldn't. Yeah, it's probably not fair to just to use the term just when we haven't actually sent anything that big to the moon in quite a while. So it'll be interesting to see. Hopefully they can successfully run that test. I said they had some issues in a couple of spots that required the entire assembly to be moved back into the assembly building, which is a quite a lengthy trip because you have that huge platform that sort of crawls along at like 1 mile an hour, less than a mile an hour, across a custom built path to carry that much weight from the assembly building to the launch pad. So that's a big deal. It's a big evolution for them to have to bring something back to the launch pad means that to the assembly building means that they really had a serious issue that required serious disassembly. So it took them a while, but and it's one of those things. SpaceX, I think we talked about, it sort of demonstrated that as long as you don't endanger humans, having a failure at a test launch sometimes isn't the end of the world, right? I mean, as Elon Musk sort of famously coined the term uncontrolled deconstruction. Uncontrolled disassembly. When they crashed during the many crashes when they attempted to land their first stage, and they had several failures of the early prototypes of the Falcon before they were able to launch that successfully. So there's nothing terribly wrong with there being problems during a test launch attempt. That's why we do them after all. So, yeah, they're um, so that is pretty much all I've come across that is at least relevant to this particular to our particular range of topics. Um, I can't really recall if there's anything.
Yeah, nothing else has jumped out at me
Things
recently.
nothing sort of happened that jumped at me in the in this sort of in the like the space and IT context. Of course, we have a semester starting up shortly, so I've not been following things quite as thoroughly as maybe I do normally. All right, well, let me. All right, so let me bring up. Whoops. Find that window, and we'll. I know it's not on stream. No worries. I understand that. So let me. So the first thing I do is jump into the. So again, context here. What we're looking at is it's actually a virtual machine, but it is an instance. It is an Ubuntu. I think it's probably 20, or either 20 or 22. I'm not sure what they're on. I think it's maybe a 22. Um, the uh, so it's a stock Ubuntu install with the graphical user interface. It is running a package called GNS3, which is what I have open here in the foreground. And I'm going to maximize it here. It was maximized. So this is a simulation package. It has the ability to coordinate the deployment of various virtualized network elements. They're either there are a few very simple ones that are built into the GNS3 software. Most of the more complex ones are either virtual machines or containers. And so we can sort of graphically drag and drop and connect different elements on this canvas, but they're all operational. So we can then log into each device, at least the ones that have a command line of some sort. We interact with the devices, configure them, and build a network that we can then test and sort of see if it does what we want it to do. All right, and so I can so you can see there's an Ethernet switch here, so I can drag that onto the canvas, and if I wanted to, I think I can rename it in the configuration. Yeah, so I give it a name if I need to. I can determine how many ports I wanted to have, all those good things. So it's an interesting. I mean, this is a fairly complicated installation. I mean, it's an open source project. Anybody can deploy it. If you have and if you have an Ubuntu machine lying around, you too can install this. I would not recommend running it on a machine you care about, because it is very intrusive, because it has to it jumps onto networking and network interfaces of the host machine, all those good things. And it draws on. I don't know if I can see this here. At some point, they had some of the tools. Again, I did not build this, right? This is created by a couple of my colleagues in the department who become real experts at working with this. Where kind of basically create a template, and I said this is the container, the outside machine is a virtual machine itself. So this is kind of inception level, multiple levels down in virtualizations. but it uses so this environment uses the KVM virtual machine controller, and it installs Docker. So a lot of the elements on here are the Docker containers or the virtual machines. Hello, DG. Welcome, welcome, and whoever came in with you. We're happy to have you here as always. Hope you had a good stream. I don't know how the weather's is holding up in your neck of the woods, but I know it's been super hot. I don't know if you were able to play games today, or if you're poking at some IT stuff like you were last time. Um, the uh, and as always, let me point out to anyone who's not familiar with ODG Stream, Old Depressed Gamer, and we have the link here in chat. But twitch.tv/Old Depressed Gamer. ODG is an IT professional, retired, just like I am, but does some coding. He does some uh, varied IT stuff, and he does what I don't do on stream, at least not on this stream. He also does play a lot of games, and most importantly, his stream is a safe place for anyone with mental health issues who ultimately might need a listening ear, which he is happy to provide off stream. So a really good place to go and hang out. MacLoop and flights. Oh wow. Um, I didn't. Is this Microsoft's flight simulator? I didn't realize that it had an aircraft creation, and there was an aircraft creation for that sim. That sounds amazing. Um, that sounds amazing. Um, yeah, I think you built an aircraft. ODG, I think as I recall, you built an aircraft. Um, oh, there's an SDK for the 2020 flight simulator. Wow, that's a whole world I have absolutely no visibility into. I bet is complicated. You built an aircraft and an airplane in real life, as I recall. So at least you know some of the concepts. I would be totally lost trying to do that. So what I'm trying to build, segue. Um, what I'm trying to build here is something I understand a little bit better, and that is yeah. So you're trying to build the RV12 in the flight simulator? Okay, okay, okay. Yeah, that makes good sense. That makes good sense. Well, let's see if I can build something useful. It won't fly. But so what I was saying is the GNS3 package it takes advantage of a lot of things we've talked about here on the channel in the past. Docker containers first and foremost, as well as more traditional virtual machines. I don't have a really good way of knowing. So the device uh, the device that we're going to work with a lot because I need to learn it and learn it better. I know sort of the basics, but I don't really know enough to really do some of the more advanced stuff I want to do for my graduate class. Um, let's see let's see if I can. Yeah, so this is a virtual machine, and the only reason I can sort of guess at it, it's a QEMU binary, which is the simulation, the open source virtual machine system we're using. Have you ever used that Pixlr? Obviously, I don't think I have directly.
Oh, very briefly. I was exploring virtualization engines, 10 years ago. And obviously QEMU and KVM and VMware and VirtualBox, all those sort of the usual tools came across my desk as I was doing that. But I think I attempted to spin up one and said, nope, that's too
Mm-hmm.
complicated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a compare. I mean, it's just because of the environments I've worked with so far, I've usually for virtual machines, I've usually ended up using some of the cloud services which we played with on stream,
Hmm.
or I've used Parallels on Mac OS, and I've used VirtualBox a little bit, which is a VMware product, I think. And I've used VMware, of course, but that's a high-end enterprise commercial bare metal interface. I've used Hyper-V a little bit, uh, but not a
Oh
ton.
yeah, nobody should really be forced to use Hyper-V ever. So
That was an
you
interesting
know,
experience, but yeah, so we're using Hyper-V
so
for something. I can't remember. It was in a for a class, a networking class or a networking lab class. So, anyways, so what I'm going to, what I'm going to do here is, how do I do that? Oh no, I just didn't. I hadn't moved yet. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is create a network and ultimately um, make it more complicated. Uh, uh, and explore the VyOS operating system and especially its routing capabilities. Because ultimately, aside from some basic, there's some other things. I mean, and you'll see in a moment, the VyOS has a series of features, and we'll bring up the documentation in just a second. No, I'm not going to read the entire manual on screen, but there's just a nice table of contents we can scroll through. So it has some really nice capabilities. It's really a little bit more than a router, and so that gives me some options to use these systems in kind of interesting ways. So what I want to do here for now, I think what I let's start simple. So we're gonna do this. Okay. Let's do three Ethernet switches. I don't know why it never puts the switch where I want it. It's just ornery that way. Um, Actually, all right. Let's get. I know I need three of these things, and I'm going to put them where I want them here in just a second. And so I'm going to do three. So basically, what I want to do is create a ring of routers, um, which is the minimal configuration to sort of moderately interesting, and we're going to make it a bit more interesting than that as we go. One more. I'll put you over here. Of course, you're not going to go where I want you. That's all right. I can put you here, you here, you here. All right. So each of the Ethernet switches is kind of our mechanism to provide. It basically represents a network, right? So routers are the connectors, so they're the nodes in a network and in a network graph. And switches pretty much represent the actual connectivity between the routers and other devices. Uh, yeah, I mean, performance-wise, it's not great. Again, especially since we're double virtualizing here, right? ODG. So yeah, uh, the intent, of course, was to run. Well, actually, I take that back, and I don't know. Again, I haven't tried to run it as a production grade, a virtualized one as a production grade network element. Um, we can jump to the we'll do the minute. This actually VyOS is actually designed to install either on I think there's a version for bare metal, which is what you're talking about, running on dedicated hardware, You can run it on a physical Ubuntu, physical machine running Ubuntu, which is sort of the most common environment. And they now have a cloud-based. They have VyOS instances for the various cloud services, so you can actually run production-grade virtualized VyOS in like AWS, for example. At least that's my understanding. I have not done it though, so I don't know what the performance is. But yeah, so we're going to go ahead and connect these things up. Now, I'm you see, and again, it might be a little bit hard to read. Because the user UI elements don't scale don't scale with. I can scale the canvas, but I don't think the UI elements scale with that. Um, the yeah, unfortunately, I don't think they do. Now I can try it. Let's see, move you up a little bit. Let's see this. Now let's see what happens if I try to do that. Nope. Look to me like they're pretty much the same size. That's all right. So these we've got these things pre-configured into the virtualized. So the virtualized machine that these things are running in is configured with 8 Ethernet interfaces. I'm going to just out of convention for now start with Ethernet 1 on these routers and leave Ethernet 0 sort of for uplinks to this is the next sort of the next hierarchy of the next level up. No particular reason. I mean, I could. I just want to keep things sane for myself. Um,
I have been Origin. I think I'm coming through. Last I checked, I was.
he hasn't said very much Origin. Let me double check. And I can hear him.
Yep,
And yep.
I just
And
checked.
I can.
I just double
Yep.
checked on my
I
side.
thought I could
Yep.
hear him. Yeah. Uh, yeah. He's just been super quiet. um, all right. So let's hook up some connection. Now the interesting thing, and I wasn't sure that on the switches I don't care. I just grab the next one that's available because we don't configure those anyway. Um, these are what we call dumb switches. They have no config. They don't have a configuration interface. There's nothing they can really do. Um, One thing that I thought the first time I used GNS3, the I didn't think it would let me create and delete connections while elements were running, but that is not true. I actually tried that before stream. So, yeah, ODG, or empiric slip is right, but I think audio issues are uh, are just the hardest ones for streaming or broadcasting to solve. And video is remarkably easier than audio. And
It really does feel that way, doesn't it?
yeah, and Arjun, I was concerned when you said that there's a sync issue, but I see PX Flip pretty well on sync too. So maybe, but I also noticed that Twitch was glitching a little bit on us. So at one point, so it may have just been a dropout. I hope it was.
Yeah, I would say you've dropped a couple, I feel like, frames, so
Not on my end. My ODG, well, ODG, great. Folks, if you joined late, I'm under the influence of all the allergy drugs. So if I start babbling, that's my excuse. But no, OBS says I've dropped no frames. So since we started,
hmm,
so
who
whatever.
knows? I ask
But
no questions.
no, but that doesn't mean that Twitch doesn't drop them. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, Origin. Yeah, GNS3 has become Uh, you big hello, hello, welcome, welcome. I have been really bad about exporting the streams to YouTube, but I will get back on that. Especially the ones like this one, which is also useful for my students. Some of the streams we did over the summer were really just kind of fun stuff, and so over the summer I've really and late spring I really just first run out of time, and then then a lot of topics were like it really doesn't matter one way or the other. But I need to get that cleaned up. The intent is that not all, but most of the streams should eventually get to YouTube. If it just I've been terrible at it. Uh, the um, the VODs on Twitch should be around for 60 days, I think. So you can get a little bit, you can get a few streams back. But I do have a YouTube channel, and I do intend to get better at like this one, like this stream here. I'm almost certainly going to upload. One of the things that I run into is I when I use my gaming Windows PC and a Linux machine for kind of my two productivity machines. And I don't miss Mac OS a lot, but my God, I miss iMovie because video editing, even on I just don't have a good tool. It's not like my rig isn't capable of doing video editing, but I really don't want to pay Adobe the fees that they command for high-end video editing, and I don't know how to use it properly anyway. So I've seen a couple of ads for kind of lower-end tools, and I've tried some open source ones and they suck. I'm sorry, good intention, but they're usually wrapped around FFmpeg and do it poorly. Um, yeah, I've used OpenShot. I think
Yeah,
Shotcut is
Shotcut
no
is the other
Shotcut is
one.
the one I use. Yeah, and I was not impressed. Um, I've heard about
DaVinci.
DaVinci.
Interesting.
Um,
Let's
and
look at
there
that.
is I just saw one called Filmoria. I think that's right. Um, which it is not free. It is not free. Yeah, that's the other that's why I like the VOD so much better. Um,
It's admittedly, it's probably why some streamers will embed a chat
yeah, so that
overlay.
it preserves it, and
You
yeah,
don't have to worry about it.
it is on
It's on
screen.
screen
Yep.
by default.
Uh, so I'm trying to is Origin, is DaVinci Resolve free? I didn't realize that. Cool. I need to look at that. Yeah. Um, all right. That's so the reason I bring that up is one of the reasons, Ubik, that I haven't done as much YouTube uploads. Uh, there've been a lot of streams recently where we've just meandered through a whole bunch of topics. And I can take my YouTube videos and give them chapter indices, and that's what I do. And if a stream is at least sort of somewhat coherent, I'm going to go back. We did a couple of streams on the James Webb Instruments, where that's what we did for the entire stream. So I think I'll just upload those with some chapter markers. So if the stream is pretty coherent, yeah, well, I didn't say the streamer. If the stream is relatively coherent, then I can just upload the whole thing with chapter markers, and I think that works really well. And you'll find a bunch of them on my YouTube that way. But if we spend half the stream doing one thing and then half the stream doing something completely different, or we had a big stretch where we got into some side, some side issue that, while it was an interesting discussion on Twitch, it really doesn't have much longevity. I'd really like to be able to just do some simple things like cutting out just sections that in and of themselves are useful without having people scrub through an entire hour and a half video. That's been it really been holding me back, is the the fact that I didn't feel I had a viable way. And I know FFmpeg, but I really don't want to, you know, figure out, use a video player to figure out time markers, and then use FFmpeg command line commands to cut things. It's just, I mean, I'm not that into it. But I'll definitely look at DaVinci, and I'll look at OpenShot again. I think I might have tried to use OpenShot on my Linux machine. Uh, so and I'm I still have a Mac OS machine, and I'm in the process of kind of getting that cleaned up. I mean, that was my primary machine, and it just got so much stuff on it that I need to sort of uninstall to make it a little bit more streamlined. But it of course has iMovie, which I know how to use. It's really simple, and does the things I want to do really well. So anyway, long answer to a short question. There will be more YouTube videos, and I pretty much uh, most of our streams I have the recordings. I just haven't done anything with them because in some cases, especially for the last few months, I've looked at it and said, that's really not. I really don't want to take this whole chunk and send it up to YouTube. Nobody's gonna look at it even with chapter markers. So there's that. Um, so I mean, and I think somebody. Um, Yeah, Origin said yes. So back to GNS3. Origin commented on it being a really good learning tool. Yeah, we've standardized a lot of our IT labs around GNS3. Um, in a bit of whimsicalness, our network administrator calls these virtual machines that run GNS3 ghosts, as G hosts, G for GNS3, of course. He confused one of my colleagues completely today. He sent an email saying, if you need ghosts for your students, please, here's send me a spreadsheet and here's the information I need. And one of my colleagues said, it took me much longer than it should have to realize what you meant by providing ghosts to students. Can we please spell it with small g or something so I don't get confused when we talk about ghosts? Anyway, so we use these templates. The virtual machine with GNS3 pre-installed in it with the network elements configured in particular ways. We use that for a whole lot of our lab classes, and some of them, most of them now. Some of them during the height of the COVID pandemic were completely virtual. Um, yes, you probably know this better than most. Is that you can get a network engineer tied in knots if you tell them create 6 machines and make up the names, and they're going, oh my God, what am I going to name these? We have names. We have machines named after Star Trek characters, of course. Yes, half my setup time is thinking of a good name. I'm the same way. Uh, there's still machines running around in our network infrastructure in the department I used to lead. At some point, our network administrator says, I need DNS names for all of the IP addresses that are in our operational subnet, so I can just pre-program those. So you want me to come up with I don't know, 60 names? You can sort of tell. I mean, I panicked. Just what to do. So I went through. I think there's a table of standard names for colors, and so a lot of our machines, there's chocolate and tomato, and purple, and black and white, and those sort. Just because I just went through a list of names for colors, and said, here, number 1 is white, black, and we'll just go from there.
I'm going to express my external user of network network admins server naming and tell you that please, for the love of God, just come up with a standardized naming system that is dev dash php dash 5 dash. No, don't put in Latin names, trees, gods, Star Trek characters. If you tell me, oh, it's on Uhura, oh, great. What's Uhura? What's running there? Is it a web server? Is it a database server? Is it a
Yeah,
Docker host? Kubernetes? What does it do? No,
yeah,
it's K8s-1, K8s-2. I'm sorry.
yeah.
I have really strong opinions about this
No,
because my
yeah.
network team, our security folks refuse to come up with a standardized naming sequence
It
because
gives
they
it
think
gives
that
oh it gives information away.
randomized names gives information. I'm like, come on, really? If someone gets our host name, it's oh yeah, that works for me, ODG. No, actually, I lied. No, that doesn't help me. Positioning doesn't matter. That's metadata. I want to know what the
Yeah,
server does. Tell me what the server is for. If it's an Apache server, it's Apache dash. Fine, you want something cute, Apache Oak, but I need to know what the server
right,
does without having to think about it. It's all about that I come back to it all the time when we were talking about programming. It's all about
right.
cognitive load. And all of a sudden you've introduced a significant amount of cognitive load where every time I have to go and think about a server, I'm like, oh, I have to go pull up the spreadsheet. I don't remember what that thing does. What's
Yeah,
installed on that? Does it have PHP 7? Does it have PHP 8? Does it have Node? Does it have
yeah. So
it's
so no,
sorry,
uh,
it's pet peeve.
no, and
You hit one
that's
of
a
my
good one, and
triggers.
and I think we will try to introduce some naming here in my network as
I
well.
mean,
But no, so
name whatever
no,
you want. Just
yeah,
let me be clear. In a
production, yeah,
production environment where there are non-network admins who are expected to use
yeah.
your network infrastructure, just
Yeah.
come up with a common naming scheme
Origin,
and stick
yeah,
to it.
that's one of my pet peeves. Yeah,
it I
that whole
agree. Yeah,
security through obscurity
I
is absolute rubbish,
I
and nobody
I
should
say
ever do that.
you should have heard my eyes roll when CSO said something about, oh well, I don't want to give away things. I'm like,
Really, they're so
really?
easy to find.
I nearly like. I'm like, it
I
doesn't
can scan. I
matter.
can.
It's a port 80. It's dumping headers that tells me it's running
Yeah.
Apache. Your bloody firewall, your stupid ass firewall that keeps breaking my applications is dumping the fact that it's running
Right.
Nginx.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay, you
Yeah.
hit a trigger. I'm done.
So,
I'm
but
gonna calm
well,
down now.
one more note on the naming because uh, the what we run into, of course, is that we have a very volatile network where the same addresses get
Yeah,
reused for different purposes.
yeah,
So what we do in those cases where we actually end up with something production grade, so we still have DNS names for this, basically, and we can talk about this. The A records, right, where a name is directly tied to an IP address. A lot of times those are strategic, or they're sort of these random names that we just had to put in so we get to the IP addresses. But once we have something running that has a particular purpose, like your Apache server, we use a CNAME. So Apache 01 dot bigcorp.net would actually resolve to rack 18 slice 7 dot
yep,
whatever, which then resolves the IP
right,
address, so everybody's happy, right? If I need to so if I
yeah,
need to access the management interface for the server hardware, I use the name that the IT folks know because it has meaning to them, and you use Apache 01 and are perfectly happy, and DNS is perfectly happy, and if you need a certificate, will be for Apache 01.bigcorp.net, and so the applications folks don't have to think about what the underlying name is. The other advantage, of course, is that if you have to move the thing around, it's typically a little
yeah.
easier to move CNAMEs
Uh,
around. So
yeah. CNAMEs. I mean, CNAMEs are huge for anything that's web accessible, or even necessarily
yeah,
that you want to be able to address internally. But yeah, it's
yeah,
just it. We at my work we literally have trees, gods, and I think we're introducing a new naming sequence, and I don't recall what it is off the top of my head. but the number of times I'm like, wait, which one's Maple again? I don't
And
remember. What's
and
Vesta
some of our
doing? I don't know.
internal names like it's like ITS S1 for server one, ITS S2, and so on. I am always at a loss as to
Not
which one's which.
right. I say yeah, even with good naming schemes, yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes you really
So
need
so
you want to use almost every character available to you.
I would love to have a scene, and because you have to type them in sometimes in the IT world, you don't make them too
Yeah,
long.
yeah.
So having a C name that said uh, having a C name that says RDP Gateway dot its.ohio.edu leading
Mm-hmm.
to ITS S4, I think it is, which then leads to the right IP address. It would actually be super helpful because otherwise, I always have to look it up. I just don't know.
Heck, I would probably go something like ITS-RDP-UB-20 for like
Right,
Ubuntu 20, right? Like be really particular about I want to know exactly
right.
what is running on that particular server. But anyway, we've
No,
gotten way off topic again.
that's that
But yeah,
that's perfectly fine. So, excuse me, man. That's the only good thing about winter.
yeah.
Allergies tend to not be as bad.
Accurate.
So what we're going to do here is, so we've created a very simplistic network, but it gives us some opportunities to look at routing. So what I want to do here is to start one of these guys up, and this will take these things aren't too bad. If this was a graphical user interface operating system like Windows, it would take a while. But um, uh,
Better yet, Pixie boot them off of a server that you run, so that then they're just dead hardware unless you have your servers up and running. There you go. Completely on
well,
fire.
so you can see this is virtual. I don't know what these images run underneath. It may be Ubuntu. It may be Ebine. It may be I think it's a Debian. I think it's Debian based, but I'm not sure.
It's almost certainly Debian based. Looking at that, that looks like
It looks
it
very
looks
much
like
like,
the
yeah,
Ubuntu
yeah.
terminal to me. It's running the Wayland now. Whatever it looks to me like it's running
Oh wait.
the
The
Wayland
the
window.
what the decorations of this window. That is Ubuntu because this is an Ubuntu host
Oh, you're looking at the
console
console. Okay.
connecting to the virtual
Yes.
router.
There you go. Never mind then.
So
I thought you were looking at a router.
the
Jeez.
virtualization can be a beast. So the decorations
Yeah.
on here are so this thing actually runs, of course, VyOS. Basically, what it basically it runs a shell that immediately launches the VyOS operating system. And so the weird thing is you can actually, I think, run uh, uh, these are, I think, uh, these are sort of operating system level commands. Um, but most of what we're going to do are going to be VyOS commands. So before we get much further here, let me jump in here. So this is the VyOS documentation page. Let's see if I can at some point it's going to just sort of do the adaptive thing on us, but that still looks pretty good, I think. So this is docs.vios.io. Um, so this is their documentation server. Um, but and it's which is and it's hosted on this is essentially this is a GitHub instance. Now let me find VyOS itself because I can't remember what their VyOS router VyOS download. Okay, let's do that. VyOS.io. Okay, it is VyOS.io. This without the docs. Okay, that makes sense. So this is the um, this is this is this is the main VyOS page. Um, there's the VyOS router. That's where I want to go. And I'm trying to think. Oh, there we go. Support that. That's what I want to go to. Supported platforms. All right. So you can run these obviously on bare metal. Well, not obviously. They have a bare metal install that will run on a couple of bits of hardware. Um, I think we're using KVM with the QEMU is the actual emulation engine behind that. But you can run Hyper-V, which we mentioned earlier. Um, Oracle VM. I haven't used Proxmox. I've heard about it. Obviously, you can run it on VMware. And this, ODG to your point, uh, while obviously virtualized routing hardware, virtualized routing instances or appliances, still a bit of a new thing. They're not, as new anymore. And clearly, anything we do on AWS or Google or DigitalOcean for that matter, all the network, a lot of the networking infrastructure there that we looked at, like in our Kubernetes cluster, which had an Nginx container as its entry load balancer. That's a routing instance, but it is virtualized, right? So it supports uh, all three of the big ones: AWS, Azure, Google Cloud. OpenStack is is an open source cloud service. Oracle, which I have not used, but I don't know anything about, and FlowSwiss, which I also don't know anything about. So that's VyOS. Now I mostly wanted this up to sort of go to. So this is what I'm going to. This is what I'm going to use to kind of remind myself and sort of work my way through the various bits and pieces of how to use and configure these routers. All right, so we have a little quick start guide here. So at the command level, basically at the in the command line interface, the uh, the main commands are basically set commands and show commands. Now, and much like the Origin says Proxmox is an interesting product. I ended up going back to VMware. Yeah. I just don't know very much about it at all. That's something I need to look at. So at the much like the Cisco routers do, and I think this mirrors what Juniper does. You can display configurations, and you can set a few sort of global parameters from the command line, but the actual router configuration uses a different user interface. You jump into configure mode, which you then exit it back into the normal command line mode. So if we go back to our router here, I can do, it has tab completion, so I can do show, and now it will show me all the stuff that it is willing to display. Right, so you can show information about ARP, about uh, interface, the configuration. Um, it will show us information about interfaces, which we'll look in a moment. IP routing, which is what I'm very much interested in, and so on. Um, came over what you can actually do with set. Um, yeah, so there's very little. There's very little you can actually do um, as far as setting things. These are basically a few global settings you can use. Um, Now, if I type configure, notice that the prompt has changed. It makes it look like you're at a root prompt, which is kind of weird. Um, but I suspect there's probably a way to change different give different users different abilities. So I suspect editing the configuration is considered to super user ability. Um, uh, yeah. So in Cisco routers, it was always the configure terminal is how you got the interactive editing. So this is quite similar. Quite similar. Some of the things that you do to get back out of this are different. There is a save there, but you have to commit, which is sort of the same thing as um, well. That's you use a commit. I haven't used any of the newest Cisco operating. I haven't been in a Cisco operating system in a while. The ones I was using a while back, a lot of commands were immediate. You typed a command, and it would immediately change the configuration that was active in the router. But it wouldn't change what happened if the router rebooted. So it wouldn't save it in non-volatile memory. In this case, none of the commands that you type to configure the router uh, do anything until you commit them, in which case they become active. And then there's also a save command to make sure they're stored as non-volatile, so that when you restart the router, it comes back up with the same configuration. I think I can exit out of here. I'm not sure. Yeah. So if I exit, if I had actually done anything in the router to configure the router, it would have screamed and said, "You haven't committed those changes. Do you really want to exit?" It will let you exit without saving, but it really gets grumpy about you exiting. It really wants you to confirm that you want to exit without committing, because you basically delete all the things you've done. Um, all right, so there we go. So what I wanted to do is show a couple of the things that this we're going to the configuration guide here. So a couple of things that I'm going to be quite interested in over the next several weeks to look into. So initially we're going to look at things like configuring interfaces. Um, uh, Network address translators. So, as most routers can, and again, Cisco, Juniper can all do this. Um, the old Ubiquiti Edge routers also run this operating system. Uh, some version of it. It may not be the newest version, but they run this. I don't know what the newer ones run, but that one's end of life. But the Ubiquiti Edge routers run VyOS. So their network address translation capabilities. Their um, yeah, this I don't know what they mean by policies, and apparently they haven't edited that part of the manual very well. So I was wondering if it was doing traffic shaping, but I don't think it is. A lot of the stuff I'm interested in will be under protocols. um, so the first routing um, experiment, other than static, so there's static routing, which we'll play with first. And then the first one I'm going to play around with is OSPF, which is a simple routing protocol meant for use within an organization. And I really want to see how much BGP they've implemented, because that's the routing protocol that the internet service providers use between their networks. So RIP is quite old, and didn't survive the move to IPv6, or even some of the more modern address configurations. But there's some interesting protocols I want to play with, and then this router has the device router has a number of kind of interesting services. It can this is definitely something we're going to play with. It can provide DHCP service, dynamic configuration service. And it's really pretty easy to set up. Um, it can serve network management information. Um, it can serve as a web proxy, which I don't think I'm necessarily do very much with. So it does have a traffic policy. So it has a traffic shaper, basically a quality service setting. It can do virtual private networking, which is kind of interesting. So so let's go back in here. I should probably minimize this other window. It gets kind of confusing. There we go. So I think looking at the time here, let's sort of figure out a little bit of a network layout and see if we can maybe get a couple of these routers to talk to each other. I'm going to start this guy up so we can use it. I'm going to move this over here somewhere, a little bit off screen, so I can get back to my other one. That's not that one. I want that one. Nope, I want the other one. That one. Okay. So before we do much with these things, let's sort of figure out what we want to do here. So I'm going to actually I'm going to use labels. They work reasonably well, I think. So up here, we're going to use this network up here will be 10.0 dot. Well, let's do 1.0/24. Okay, so quick reminder: any IPv4 address that starts with 10 is reserved by RFC 1918 as an IP address that I can freely use without it interfering with anything. Even if I connect this to the internet, those addresses are recognized as being basically private addresses. So they're non-routable, non-assigned addresses. And so there's a whole bunch of them, and it makes sort of nomenclature really easy. So that's going to be my my network that is basically, so anything connected to this switch up here is going to live in that address space. So we've on VyOS 1 here, we've assigned Ethernet 1 to the to that network. So we now have to give it an address. So otherwise it doesn't know that it can talk on that interface. So let me find him here. There we go. So I can display all the interfaces, and again, it's I can make these maybe one bigger. Oh, I have not made this one bigger. Sorry about that. There we go. Um, so uh, notice that over here. So all of the so this router, as we said, has 8 Ethernet interfaces, and everything has a loopback. They are all up in the system, but the link, the equivalent of the Ethernet cable being plugged in, is only active on not on 1 and 2. So those are the ones who connected. We want 1. So the interface 1 is called ETH1, Ether 1. That's a fairly common. In fact, that's again what we see in a Cisco router, for example, a Cisco operating system. So I should be able to do something like this if I remember these things properly. So I'm going to go into configure mode. And so now what I want to do is set interfaces, Ethernet, Ether1. Now I can't remember what else I need to do here. The address. I think that's all I need to do. Okay, so address 10 dot, and so here we come to another uh, point that network admins always have. This is a convention, right? There are no rules here. So in the network, let me move this over just a little bit. In the network, we've chosen 10.0.1.0/24. All address. So nominally that includes that's the range 10.0.1.0 through 10.0.1.255. The .0 address is reserved by convention. There really isn't any particular reason why you couldn't use that, except a lot of operating systems rejected. And for documentation purposes, that's the number you always use to represent the actual network. But that's really just a convention. There's really no particular reason you couldn't use that, but nobody does. The highest number, 10.0.1.255, is the is the IP broadcast for that subnet. So you can't use that one. You can't assign that one. So my convention has always been that I put routers on the highest addresses. But if you've configured a home router recently, they always want to put themselves on .1 on the lowest address, which I find confusing because most of the time I don't care where the router is, I care where my computers are. But hey, it is a convention. So I'm going to give this one the address 254, and I need to tell it what the network mask is. So it can properly identify what machines are in the same subnet. Okay, I didn't get an error. That's good. Now I want to commit that. Let's go ahead and save it. And then we'll exit. Now, if I do... Fortunately, the scroll back contains all the configuration commands, which it doesn't understand the different modes. So let's do show interfaces again. So we've now configured Ether1 with an address. So I should now also be able to show the IP routing table. Let's see if it has anything in there. And it knows that, so is that held correctly? And again, Ubik, if you've used Cisco iOS, I mean, this is let's just say borrowed from Cisco iOS verbatim. This is what the output on Cisco iOS would look like. So this router now knows that its Ether1 interface is directly connected to that subnet. So we should be able to talk to anything else on that subnet. And we, of course, conveniently have another router on that subnet, so we could do that. We'll go here. So this is the one on the other side. I'm going to, whoops, I didn't want to find. I wanted to enhance. There we go. I've got this one at, okay. Alrighty. Okay. Alright, and this guy here is also, that's also its Ether1 interface. So I'll do the same thing here. So I'm going to give this one 10 dot, 1 dot, the next one down, so it'll be 253. I can't remember what commit confirm does. No, 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 no. I don't want to do that. I want to reboot. Let's just commit the normal way. There you go. I'll save it. I will exit. Show interfaces. Okay. So now, let's see if this works. And it does. All right, so not that we've done anything profound here, but so we have two routers running, and they can at least talk to each other. They can't see anything else. They have no clue how they would reach the one here at the bottom, which we haven't configured yet. And the other thing I want to do here is, let's see if I remember how to use these, if they still use them. Yeah, there's some. These are weird little appliances that are built into GNS3. And I can't remember how to use them. Let's see if I can figure it out. They're basically really useful as test points because they start up relatively quickly, and don't require your console. There we go. So these aren't even containers. I think they're literally built into GNS3, which is why this thing started up so quickly. Oh, let's see. Okay. What I wanted to do is, okay, so it knows how to trace route and it knows. Let's see. There we go. So I should be able to do something. Yeah. So this is a weird interface because, like I said, it doesn't exist anywhere else. This is just what what somebody came up with. Okay, so it's like I said, it's a weird syntax, but so I want to. So this is our first quandary here, right? So what I need to do is I need to configure this device here, but there are two routers to choose from. I need to tell it that I wanted to send all packets by default to one of those two routers. That's how PCs are always configured, right? So I need to randomly pick one or the other. And there really isn't any way around that. For more capable uh, devices could be programmed to do that, but I really, in this day and age where devices that are being served by the routers, we don't expect them to have any routing information unless they're like those Nginx reverse proxy load balancers. I mean, that's different. But like a web server or a database server, we don't want them to do anything routing. We don't want to have to configure routing into those, right? So routing protocols are always between routers, and the uh, if they're devices that are certain that are sitting on a network with more than one router, you generally assume that you're going to send that packets one way or the other, right? So let's just randomly pick our VyOS 1 router here. So we're going to give this guy an address. So I'm going to do IP is 10. I think it will accept the syntax, the slash syntax. And it makes sure that nobody else has that address. And it converted this to the mask interface, but it did it correctly. Right, so now I should be able to ping the routers from here. That works. And I can ping the other one. All right, so this is kind of the basics of how we start getting stuff set up. Right, and these things are useful. These routers will have some other networks that are just sort of at least one or two of them will serve other networks that just have like one of these things on. So this is kind of our canary in the coal mine, so we can see whether or not that the routers will serve can send can service the devices on that network as well as get traffic to a device on that network. Right. All right. Uh, let's see. I think we're going to wrap up with like 10 or 15 minutes of jumping into my C# course and see what trouble we can get ourselves into there. We'll continue this. This is going to be part of the stream. Maybe shorter, maybe a full stream, depending on what I'm doing for the next several weeks, because this is something I need for the class I'm about to teach starting next week. I don't need this right away, but I do want to have, and I'm doing to build up some knowledge so I can use this in a meaningful way when we get to the point of discussing routing in the class. I need to be able to do this. So I need to think about what I want this network to look like in the end. So it's kind of interesting. One of the things that is so nice about GNS3, if I we've taught, we still teach an internet engineering class, and when that class started, it started around a donation from back then MCI, I think it was, of 3 of the used very high-end enterprise-grade Cisco routers. They're basically, actually not enterprise-grade; these were carrier-grade routers. So they were meant to sit in central in points of presence and interconnection points on the internet. So we had 3 of those, and so all the experimentation that the students were able to do were built around networks that had 3 routers on them. So we had a network like this that the students experimented on. What is so nice here is that I can deploy. Let's see. There's a right now the host computer for this thing is running at about 30% CPU load. So I can. So I'm not stressing the simulation in any way. We'll have probably 5 or 6 of these routers in different configurations. I just need to kind of think about what's the most interesting thing to do, and then just sort of work with that and do configurations in different ways. All right, so let me. So I'm. So yeah. Oh, did you? So uh, the class I'm teaching is kind of interesting because we have a graduate program that is really uh, targeted not like a traditional graduate program where someone comes out of an undergraduate program immediately moves into that. Although there are students have done that, but that's not the primary audience. Most of our students have worked for a carrier, have worked for a cellular provider, have worked in the industry somewhere, and so all the students I'm going to have in my class come next week will have some IT background, but they won't match. Right? Some of them will know IP, others will not have looked at IP routing at all ever. So very much like you're saying, I mean you know a ton about the cable industry and the hardware you know a ton about the low level transmission formats, but maybe haven't touched the networking as much. And that's true for for the students in our program. So my task is in this class is sort of figure out where the gaps are, and go quickly over things that everybody knows, and then spend time bringing everybody up to speed on topics that they're not very good at. So hopefully, at the same time, some of these trainings will be useful to you as well, in the sense of seeing some of this stuff happening. And one of the things I really want to do is once we have a network all the way running and the routing working and whatever, I want to overlay IPv6 on it as well, and see that everything actually works with IPv6, properly. I know these little so-called VPCs do not do IPv6, but we do have a little it's called IP term, which is a containerized Linux system, Linux kernel based system. So that one should handle IPv6 just fine. All right. So like I said, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it, but I just want to sort of show you where I ended up my in my Code Academy class. So I want to jump back into here, I think. So this is kind of where I ended up. So um, what I worked through off stream was a bunch of the sort of more mundane programming constructs, if statements. And now probably it's going to ask me to write one, and I won't remember because it's been several weeks. But uh, there are. So I went through all of that, and so now we're getting kind of more towards um, the more interesting bits, like creating subroutines for Fortran language, functions C language, methods class-based language, but they're all sort of the callable constructs. Um, so um, so I'm basically I think at the beginning of the module that starts talking about how these things are constructed in C sharp, right? And so it's talking about the basically passing arguments. Um, and so it wants me in here. Okay, that has a string. I'm not sure why. It wants me to All math.min, which it just used up here somewhere. Yeah. So I'm gonna have to let's see. I'm gonna have to create an integer of some sort. So I'm gonna have to do something like this. Let's see if that makes it happy. Yep. And why does it? Why does it? Oh, is it int? It's int, isn't it? Let's see.
I do believe it is not integer.
Yeah, that. Yeah. Yes, it is int. It's int and long, isn't it? I think that's right.
I'm terrible. I do not recall uh, the C sharp primitives.
What does Rust use?
It's very similar to the C types. So you have
Oh,
everything
okay,
basically.
right.
I can define signed, unsigned, floats, doubles. No, no doubles. I'm sorry. Floats, 32-bit,
Right.
64-bit, 128-bit. You have the architecture specific version.
Mm.
Are there any other weird ones I've run into? Not that they're actually weird. People have been using them far longer, but it's unusual to see it at an actual, hey, this number actually supports this exact number of bits.
Yeah. Oh, did you? That's that makes a lot of sense. First of all, computer science, of course, is computer science, at least in this country, does not necessarily cover a ton of networking, although most of them do. Parallel systems is makes sense, and in at that time, when we were running token ring and coax networks, the networking wasn't ubiquitous yet. I think the IBM front end processor based networks were probably the most common ones, and they were pretty specialized and really what was in your curriculum probably was pretty well tied to that. Um, so I mean, nothing unusual here. They have the course itself hasn't really talked about what that dot notation means. I mean, it's really an object method terminology that pretty much every that pretty much every object-based language uses. Let's see. It's offer me the substring method. There we go. Um, let's see. I remember substring. It uses substring instance. Oh, there we go. Oh, okay, okay, okay. So what do I want to grab here? Get the first letter. Okay. Oh, okay, 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 right. It's a message. It's a method of the string class.
Yep, you're in OOP.
Yep. Let's see if that's correct. Should be. Nope. Okay.
I also will say that C Sharp likes its capitalization.
Oh, I keep. That is absolutely driving me batty.
It's I don't disagree. It's part of the reason I don't particularly care for it's. I don't dislike C Sharp in any significant way, but it is absolutely nutty to me um, the fact that they capitalize everything.
Oh, yeah, they wanted me to write it out. Okay, I can do that. Can we do that instead? That's fine. Yeah, I mean, I don't mind things like variables being case sensitive. That makes good sense, although it can really get you into
Sure.
trouble. Uh,
Oh,
but
absolutely.
having them actually use capitalization in like the method names means that I have talk about cognitive overload. I can remember I need substring, but now I have to think: are both S's capitalized or is only one capitalized? I mean, it makes it now. In all fairness, in all fairness, in a good IDE, I would have tab completion, and it would help me out, right? Because I would
Yeah.
see immediately where I need to go. Yeah, ODG. Yeah, look, running a coax network in the student house, you can play Command and Conquer. Yeah, run the cable up the stairs. That sounds about right. It's amazing how much uh, games can be used for education in that context. Learn the network so you can play a game with your friends. That is that's nothing wrong with that. See if I did this right. This once. Yep, I finally got it right. Okay. Clearly, I am. Let's see what is going to come next. Okay, uh, so I'm clearly getting a little too tired here. So I think we're going to call it here. And So I think we're going to do some combination of these things. I do want to, push my networking stuff. I really need to do that, it is fun to do it on stream. I'll probably do some things off stream as well, of course, like I did with the C sharp. But it'll be fun, and hopefully it'll be helpful to some of you folks. So as always, thank you for the raiders and the chatters, the folks in chat, the live chat. Thank you to all of those who were here during our live stream. It's a ton of fun if we interact with folks in chat, and that makes this an enjoyable experience. But if you're watching this as a VOD, I hope you find it useful. And if in either case, if you're on Twitch, I'd love for you to hit that follow button and help us sort of creep our follower count up a little bit. And as we talked about earlier in the stream, I am going to try to be better about getting stuff up on YouTube. And so if you're seeing this on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button and maybe give us a thumbs up if you like what we're doing. It doesn't cost you anything, and it definitely is helpful for us. And ODG, good night to you. And good afternoon, evening, night, morning to anyone wherever you happen to be or whatever your sleep schedule may be. Um, and with any kind of luck, we will be back next week. Barring bad luck, I suppose is what I should say. We'll be back next.
Barring
Yeah,
bad luck.
we'll be back next week, and hope you will be able to join us. Until then, again, thanks for being here, and bye bye.